knew this day would come. We just didn't exactly know when, and the day has arrived. Baker Mayfield has been traded. In case you've been living under a rock, just in case you've been living under a rock and you didn't hear the news, I'm going to break it down for you. Baker Mayfield traded from the Cleveland Browns to the Carolina Panthers. I'm going to give you guys my reaction, my thoughts on everything concerning the trade, what it means for the Cleveland Browns, what it means for the Carolina Panthers, with a little bit of a Buffalo Bills twist, with a little bit of a Buffalo Bills cherry on the sundae, if you will, for the Bills Mafia. So there is a reason to tune into this. My name is Ryan Thomas. This is the Thomas Take Sports Podcast. There's always a reason to tune into the show, whether I'm discussing the Bills, whether I'm discussing combat sports, or sports in general, fantasy baseball. We're in the thick of it. The All-Star break is coming up, and you know what that means. If you're in the thick of things, meaning you're not necessarily locked into a top playoff spot, I'm your guy to help you. If you have any questions at all in regards to your fantasy lineup throughout the season, whether it be baseball or football, you know where to find me. Contact me on social media at Ryan Thomas Take, and I'll do my best to help you. So with that being said, Baker Mayfield, as I mentioned, traded to the Carolina Panthers in exchange for a conditional fifth-round draft choice. And obviously, the Carolina Panthers are assuming the money, $10.5 million, actually, to be specific, within Baker Mayfield's contract. And that's important. That's important to note that, because I think that was a big reason as to why Cleveland had such a hard time trading him. Not only that, but there are plenty of other reasons for that, reasons that I will get into as we move along further in the show. But first, I want to talk about Baker Mayfield and the fit of Baker Mayfield and the Carolina Panthers. Carolina has had an extremely tough time replacing what was MVP Cam Newton in 2015. They have not had a quarterback play at that high of a level since that season. From the moment Von Miller stripped the ball out of Cam Newton's hands in the Super Bowl 50 to be exact, Peyton Manning's swan song, ultimately Von Miller's coming out party to the NFL in terms of his superstardom, the Panthers have not been able to find the right guy since. The Panthers have not been able to find that type of quarterback in terms of sheer dominance at the position ever since. They've failed with not only Cam Newton, they've failed with Teddy Bridgewater, they have failed with Sam Darnold. And that was an experiment that they also tried to buy into and try to somewhat buy low on this past offseason, trading a mid-round selection, third or fourth, I believe, to the Jets for the services of Sam Darnold. Now, what's funny about this trade is not only how long it took, but what's funny about the trade is the obvious point that I've realized. I don't know if you guys have realized it yet, but we as Buffalo Bills fans can collectively kind of laugh or scoff at this trade just in terms of the fact that Carolina has not one but two quarterbacks within the 2018 draft class on the same roster. Not only two quarterbacks, but two quarterbacks that were picked before Josh Allen, before the guy right here, right there, right here, before that guy. That's I'm pointing backwards, but if you're watching, pointing at my Josh Allen canvas. Two quarterbacks picked before Josh Allen, two quarterbacks that have not nearly had the success that Josh Allen has had. So to provide you a glimpse into the Buffalo Bills' twist to this whole thing, it's pretty funny to go back and look at 2018 and that draft class and say, my God, ESPN knows nothing, NFL Network knows nothing, and the Buffalo Bills look like sheer geniuses when news like this breaks in terms of Baker Mayfield. And yes, I will say geniuses. When news like this breaks, you have a player like Baker Mayfield picked first overall, who was noted as the next big thing. Sam Darnold noted as the most pro-ready quarterback in that class. Wasn't that long ago that those words were uttered from the mouths of Mel Kiper and Todd McShay. I will give Mel Kiper the credit where credit is due. He did say Josh Allen was his favorite quarterback in the draft. He was really the only guy that was willing to give Josh Allen the credit that he deserved coming out of Wyoming. Adam Schefter even tweeted that he would not have been shocked at that time if Josh Allen would have been the first overall draft choice by the Cleveland Browns. And many within the sport of football, many within the National Football League, thought that that decision, specifically that first overall decision, came down to either Baker Mayfield or Josh Allen, and ultimately the Browns went with Mayfield. And it makes you wonder, where would Buffalo have ended up had the Browns made the decision to go with Allen rather than Mayfield? Would the Browns even be? Would Hugh Jackson still be a head coach of the Cleveland Browns? I don't know. Maybe I'm reading into it too far. Maybe not. But those are those types of decisions that can kind of lose people their jobs. Not kind of, but literally lose people their jobs. So I offer you guys that because this was a complete misevaluation of this player, and this player meaning Baker Mayfield. Now, before I dive deep into how I evaluate Baker Mayfield and how I see Baker Mayfield, I'd be honest that I think Baker Mayfield got a completely raw deal with Cleveland. Absolutely got a raw deal with Cleveland. I would also throw the talking point out there that Sam Darnold also got a raw deal with the Jets in terms of the lack of talent that was around him, in terms of the piss-poor coaching decisions that were made, in terms of head coaches that were hired, whether it was Freddie Kitchens, whether it was Greg Williams, or on the defensive side of the ball for the Jets. I mean, Adam Gase. I mean, come on, Adam Gase. That's all I need to say. The name wasn't coming to me at first, but Adam Gase, the head coach of the New York Jets at the time, this was just a miscalculation on the Jets' part as well. Not only misevaluating the player, but running the organization poorly. And I could say the same exact thing for Baker Mayfield. I think you look at the Browns, the Cleveland Browns on paper, you see Jarvis Landry, you see Odell Beckham at the time, you see David Njoku, and probably the two best running backs on one team that you could have in Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. We know what Nick Chubb can do, and we also know what Kareem Hunt showed prior to his arrest that took him off the Kansas City Chiefs roster. Baker Mayfield was surrounded with all the talent in the world, but it wasn't necessarily, in my opinion, the right personality type. He needed great players. He didn't need divas. He didn't need specific skill position type personalities at wide receiver or at running back for that matter. He just needed solid contributors, guys that kept their head down and went to work. And frankly, that is similar to the weaponry that now Deshaun Watson might not have at his disposal. More on that later. But Baker Mayfield was wronged, greatly wronged, during his time as a Cleveland Browns quarterback. He's a first overall draft choice in 2018. And he led the Browns to the playoffs. He had a great rookie campaign, played hurt for the organization, played hurt for the franchise, played hurt, and the organization knew that, and yet they went into a full deep dive investigation into Deshaun Watson from October on, while knowing that Baker Mayfield was playing with a torn labrum, which is a very serious injury for any player, let alone a quarterback. So going into Baker Mayfield as a player, though, as a quarterback, who is he? What type of player is he as of right now? My evaluation on Baker Mayfield as it stands right now, at his best, on his best day in the National Football League, he is average. Average. Not better than average, not below average, average. And average Baker Mayfield is better than the below average play of Teddy Bridgewater, Cam Newton, and Sam Darnold. So if you're asking the question whether or not the Carolina Panthers got better today, the answer is yes. How much better? Marginally better in comparison to what the Panthers have had in previous seasons. But that doesn't necessarily mean that Baker Mayfield's going to be worse in Carolina than he was in Cleveland. In many facets of his game, I think potentially he could be even better. And here's why. Baker Mayfield does not have the arm of a Josh Allen. Baker Mayfield does not have the size of a Josh Allen. Baker Mayfield doesn't have the arm of a Sam Darnold nor the size of a Sam Darnold. But what Baker Mayfield does have is an ability to throw the football accurately from short distance. And the Carolina Panthers have a great amount of weaponry that fit within that skill set. Christian McCaffrey being one of them. I think in terms of the run game, McCaffrey has honestly had 2 down years in a row. It seems like these last couple years he hasn't been able to stay healthy. I hope that Chubba Hubbard, however you pronounce it, does get more of a role in that backfield, because I think he's earned it. And not only that, it will take the pressure and the touches away from Christian McCaffrey, touches that he doesn't necessarily need, touches that we know he doesn't need anymore, know that he can't handle anymore, as he's pushing 30. So moving into, not pushing 30, but moving into the later part of his 20s, pushing 30. So DJ Moore as well is a very good receiver. I like him a lot. I think he could be even better than what he has shown. I think that type of receiver is what would help Baker Mayfield far more than even a Jarvis Landry or an OBJ. OBJ, deep threat guy, stretch the field. Is he the biggest guy? No, but he's one of the fastest. Jarvis Landry, very similar in terms of the long vertical speed. Not a tall guy either. But Baker Mayfield couldn't hit those targets. Baker Mayfield was not about that, stretching the field life as a quarterback like Josh Allen is, where his yards per attempt are over 10 yards. Baker Mayfield is a West Coast methodical quarterback. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just trying to force him to be something that he's not is what has led him off the Cleveland Browns. That and the Browns' ineptitude in analyzing the situation. I think the Cleveland Browns would have been completely fine with Baker Mayfield as their starting quarterback heading into the 2022-2023 season, but the Cleveland Browns fell in love with fool's gold, or just fool's bronze, fool's participation trophy, I don't know. This Deshaun Watson scenario, this Deshaun Watson situation, this Deshaun Watson trade that happened a few months back, I should say, I went off on it, and I'll continue to go off on it each and every week that I'm on the show, each and every time I talk about it with a guest, no matter who it may be. This is, in my opinion, the worst trade, the trade of Deshaun Watson from Houston to the Cleveland Browns, in my humble opinion. I'm just a sports guy with my own podcast that just likes to spit his opinions out there for people to agree or disagree with. That's it. Nothing more, nothing less. I'm not an aficionado. I'm just a regular guy here, just stating my opinion. The Deshaun Watson trade from Houston to Cleveland is the worst trade, in my opinion, in recent and quite possibly the entirety of the history of the National Football League, as well as sport. Now, I talked about this with my dad as far as what are some of the really bad sports trades. And obviously, Babe Ruth going from the Red Sox to the Yankees, that's the worst trade of all time. But let's talk modern era. Currently, the worst move that was made is the Cleveland Browns upping the ante with Houston, trading 3 first-round draft choices away to the Houston Texans, 22, 23, and 24, and paying Deshaun Watson $230 million guaranteed. Now, the only reason why I think the only plausible reason, and I touched on this already, the only plausible reason that I see as to why the Browns moved on so willingly from Baker Mayfield and so willingly embraced Deshaun Watson is the question as to whether or not Baker Mayfield is healthy. Is he damaged goods? We don't know that until the season begins. Did Carolina just pay a 5th rounder conditionally, as well as $10.5 million for a damaged quarterback? Is the labrum a real problem? Did Cleveland know that this labrum injury was going to be something far worse than what they had, even dreamed? Maybe. Or is Cleveland the dumbest franchise in the NFL? Maybe both. Maybe both. Could quite possibly, very possibly, be both. But we don't know that until the season begins. We don't know what version of Baker Mayfield we will ever see, if we see the previous one or a different one or a new one, until the season starts. I think Carolina did something that is admirable in the sense that they weren't going to go into this draft in 2022 and look at these quarterbacks, the Kenny Pickett's, the Malik Willis's, and say that's the guy that's good enough to not get another year out of Sam Darnold. Because they're not. And Sam Darnold is not that good either. He obviously has had his moments in the league where he's looked like a flat-out bust, a turnover machine. Okay? But would Carolina be willing to invest a first-round draft choice in one of those quarterbacks? Clearly, only one team was willing to invest a first-round draft choice in a quarterback this year in this 2022 class. This was one of the worst classes at the quarterback position in quite some time, probably since 2013. So Carolina said, you know what, screw it. We made a trade for Sam Darnold. We're making a trade for Baker Mayfield. And at worst case scenario, this is the best, actually I should say this is the best case scenario. These guys compete. These guys go toe-to-toe, and these guys, by these guys, I mean Sam Darnold and Baker Mayfield going head-to-head, battling it out to find out who is actually legitimately ready, willing, and able to be the starter. That's why you make this move. You don't know what you have in Darnold. You don't know what you have in Mayfield, but this is one hell of a quarterback battle. It's a rarity in the National Football League that one team can take a chance on a former first overall pick and a former third overall pick in the same draft going to the same team. Yes, I can laugh at it as a Buffalo Bills fan in terms of if they just would have drafted Josh Allen, no one knew, apparently. They didn't in that building know what Josh Allen was capable of. Thank God, though, that Carolina didn't draft, or thank God, though, that Carolina didn't go out and try to sign at any point along the 28 stops that this player has had, Josh Rosen. At least they got two quarterbacks that have started games, that have shown promise, that have shown that they're capable of being a starter in the National Football League. At the very least, whoever wins this battle between Baker Mayfield and Sam Darnold, Carolina's going to have a damn good backup. Maybe the best backup quarterback in the NFL. That is the key to this whole thing. The Carolina Panthers trading for Baker Mayfield does not necessarily mean that Baker Mayfield is going to start. What it does mean, what it does signal to me, is that the Carolina Panthers are going to put together one hell of a competition for that QB1 spot with Baker Mayfield and with Sam Darnold. Sign me up. The NFL preseason actually just got a lot more interesting. The NFL training camp of the Carolina Panthers. If you're a Carolina Panthers fan, I'm talking to you, Zach Troutwine. If you're a Carolina Panthers fan and you want to see the best take the field, iron sharpens iron. One of these guys is going to show up. The other guy won't. And whoever that is, I think whoever comes out on the winning side of this is going to hit the ground running at the position. And obviously I would favor Mayfield over Darnold based on Darnold not really playing as well. Coming off of the Jets' tenure to Carolina, that was a opportunity that knocked on the door of Sam Darnold. He wanted to be traded. He wanted to be moved. He was moved. And he didn't really do a lot with it. Baker Mayfield has to do something with this. If Baker Mayfield, God forbid for him, if Baker Mayfield goes to Carolina and loses this QB1 battle to Sam Darnold, then we know for certain the former first overall quarterback is damaged goods. I don't think he quite is yet. I don't know if he is quite yet. That's my point on this whole thing. That makes this storyline that much more interesting, but it goes to show you. 2018, you had Baker Mayfield first overall. I said on the record, I thought it was one of the worst first overall draft choices in recent memory. And a lot of people said I was jumping the gun on that. What I meant then by that, and what I mean now by that, is you look at the players that were available for the Browns to take at that pick, and I did not believe Baker Mayfield was even the best quarterback in that draft class. I liked Lamar. I liked Josh. I did like Darnold. Didn't like Mayfield. Didn't like Rosen. And Cleveland takes Mayfield first overall. And 5 years later, he's gone. The Jets take Sam Darnold 3rd overall. 4 years later, he's gone. Josh Allen, the Bills traded up into the top 10, 7th overall with Tampa Bay, to get ahead of Arizona, stop Arizona from taking Allen, and they take Allen. And then Arizona takes Josh Rosen. And then back into the first round, the Baltimore Ravens trade back into the first round to take their guy, Lamar Jackson. And without a shadow of a doubt, the best quarterback in this draft class of 2018, the 2018 draft class, that is this guy right here. Nobody else. Nobody else. Lamar Jackson, yeah, you've had some decent years, but this guy is not only the best quarterback in the 2018 draft class, he might be the best quarterback in the National Football League right now. 1B or 1A to Patrick Mahomes. That's it. Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, yep. But on the other side of the coin of the match, you had Pat Mahomes and that guy for a reason. So I am smiling a little bit as a Bills fan, seeing this trade, knowing that the Carolina Panthers have these quarterbacks. It makes it a very interesting storyline, but it just goes back to the 2018 draft for me in the sense that, wow, the Bills got it right. This was the right move to make. This was the right pick for the Bills and taking on it. Whoops. It reaffirms, as I knock stuff over, it reaffirms that these guys are headed on the right track. So I'm feeling pretty pumped as I knock that stuff over. I'll pick it up at some point, but I wonder if that got heard on the audio. That'd be hilarious. But these guys are headed on the right track. They got the right guy. They drafted the right quarterback. And I'm extremely excited to see how this situation with Mayfield and Darnold pans out. Because, frankly, one of these guys has to show something. If neither one of these guys show anything, and the Panthers have to go back to the well again at taking another quarterback, my Lord. If I was a Carolina Panthers fan at that point, I would just take a year off until they seem like they have found one. Until then, Baker Mayfield traded to the Carolina Panthers. I'm Ryan Thomas. That was the Thomas Take Sports Podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. And tune in for more NFL news as well as my UFC 276 post-fight recap. I'll be recording that show as well. So stay tuned for that on the Thomas Take YouTube page for all combat sports fans out there. You don't want to miss that show. That's one where I'll dive into Volkanovski, Holloway, the aftermath of that fight, what's next for the winners and losers of UFC 276. Stay tuned. Don't miss it. YouTube, Facebook, the Thomas Take Sports Podcast. Subscribe on YouTube and like on Facebook. I greatly appreciate your support. I have some amazing things in the works for this football season. For all the fantasy football fanatics out there, there is a lot of stuff in development within my brand, the Thomas Take Sports Podcast, for you to enjoy. So stay tuned. Keep those eyes and keep those ears open. Take care.